Catholic School Board for over 12 years and in China for over 15 years. In that course of time, Lucia recognized that the systemic differences in the education systems of both countries will create a rather difficult learning experience for children of immigrants to Canada and students coming to North America to study. And so to solve this, Cnc Education Center was created to provide both consultant and information to students, to parents whose children were coming to North America to study. Now, Cnc Education Center strives for educating youth from all around the world, whether it's leadership, language, science, or STEAM. We have affordable courses for any aspiring youth with a passion to learn. Learn today and lead tomorrow.
Cnc Education Foundation is an Alberta licensed nonprofit organization founded in the year of 2019. It aims to foster better education for primary through secondary levels of education for all students. This will be achieved by offering a variety of programs to support children. The foundation provides workshops and support for learners and their parents. This support includes group purchases of learning programs and materials that are not currently easily accessible for families, literacy club, and CNC Talks programs to continue to help our community. We are currently looking for both student and parent volunteers to help us deliver quality workshops and events to the community.
Thanks, Victor. I'd also like to note that this event is organized under the nonprofit organization Cnc Education Foundation, while the other company, Cnc Education Center, is the for-profit which is actively funding this event to make it possible. Before we get into the meat of today's topic and the actual discussion on how to prepare for university for high school students with Eric, could we get Jenny to just very briefly discuss the new opportunities and programs that are going to be happening within this year's new fall program?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Thanks for coming to this panel sponsored by Cnc Edu Center. I'm Jenny, mainly responsible for the administration and the curriculum in CNC. So it's my great honor today to introduce what CNC offers in the coming fall. CNC mainly provides 5 categories. I will share my screen. Let's see. Yeah, mainly provides 5 categories, including 5 to 12 leadership, K-12 leadership, K-12 English literature studies, and 1 to 8 STEAM explorations, codings, and other language courses. Let's see. For the grade 1 to 2 programs, we have Little Leaders, and we have Junior Young Leaders and Senior Young Leaders. And also we have Public Speaking and Debate for Competition. These are all belong to the leadership categories. If you want your kids to learn like how to do debate and public speaking, I highly recommend this kind of courses for you to learn. I think Eric is a good example, set a good example for us to follow why our kids should learn the leadership, to be a leader in the future and to influence others. And for the K-12 English literature, and we have English literacy, and we have the English literacy prep for provincial achievement test. And also we have writings, a variety of writing courses here, writing for story competition, for poetry, for, all kinds of writings. If you are interested in literature analysis and how to create a character, how to write professionally, please register in this kind of courses. And also we have codings as well. And for codings, we have a Blockly, we have Python. And if your kids are interested in the website designs and game design, such kind of things, and also coding is a must to choose. And the other things is that other language courses. We have French, Spanish, and Chinese, and all sorts of languages. If you are interested in learning another language, and it's a good start to begin with. We have intermediate French and basic French, a variety of levels of French learning. Yeah, that's pretty much what CNC offers in the coming fall. If you want to know more, please connect with us with the WeChat, or please check the website for more information. Thank you again for your time. Thanks, Eric.
Thanks so much.
John. Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to say this is like a really applicable curriculum to our modern 21st century. I really like the balance between the humanities, hard sciences, languages, leadership, and also adding in that really valuable knowledge of technology, right? Which kind of leads us to today's topic with our returning guest, Eric Lee. When we interviewed him last year, he was a rising freshman. Now he's a rising sophomore, and today he's gonna essentially share with us his university experiences at Harvard, while also giving us some tips and tricks on how to prepare for that first year for students in high school. So as I discussed before, Eric is a rising sophomore at Harvard University. He's currently started studying computer science, and within the last summer, he spent the time working at an e-commerce startup in New York City as a software engineer intern, where he also spent the last month working at a lab in Columbia University. There, he was working with software to create 3D models of human skulls to run simulations for treatments of Alzheimer's disease. Can we give a big welcome to Eric Lee?
Thank you, Sean. Thank you.
So, all right, so before we get into discussion, I just want to let everyone know that we will be accepting questions from the audience at the end. So if you do have any questions or any concerns that we didn't touch base on during the actual panel, you can feel free to type them in the chat then, and then we'll be happy to answer those questions for you. So yeah, Victor, take it away.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. So first of all, obviously, we all know that Harvard is a very prestigious school, very well known. So obviously, this comes with some caveats, though. How manageable is the workload? And do students there have time to find recreation and time for other personal activities?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the workload here is really dependent on what major or concentration you're doing. For example, CS, pre-med, and biomedical engineering, things like that is definitely some of the heavier courses that you'll be taking throughout your years. I know this year for me, computer science has some really tough courses that'll take, 10 to 15 hours a week. So that is probably the heavier classes that you'll take throughout your years here. But other classes I'm taking, for example, like Spanish, is fairly light. It's a nice way to learn a new language. But if you are writing things down, your time management is okay, then it's super manageable. I still have a lot of time to hang out with my friends. I'm a part of different clubs as well. I don't find any trouble at all trying to fit in time for those clubs. So I think, there's that misconception that if you're going to university, you don't have time to have fun or to join other clubs and to do things you like outside of studying. But that's just not true. I think I've had plenty of time to join clubs. So yeah, I think it's very manageable.
Yeah, that's great to hear that you even have like free time at Harvard. So very inspiring for our future college graduates and students.
It definitely makes the Ivy League a lot more enticing. Now that people know that they will actually have lives outside of school. Am I right?
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, Victor briefly talked about, the stress of coming into a new competitive environment. Obviously, there's a ton of, amazing students all around the world coming to Harvard University. And so something that's a little less talked about, other than time management and actual studying, right, is the mental health aspect of it. So like a lot of people I know personally, they kind of struggle living on their own with, gaining independence, especially the first year, right? It's a big difference, you're learning and living by yourself. And so my question to you is, how would you recommend people cope with that stress of adapting to a new environment? And how would you kind of refrain from getting into like toxic cycles of self-comparison, which is something that even happens at the high school level.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. People often focus on just the academics part of it, or the social life, but the self-care and mental health is definitely a huge part of university as well. I know every university now is putting an emphasis on that. They're providing services, they're providing, support for anyone that needs it. But what you can do for yourself, I think, is put yourself out there, but find a really great group of friends, because you're moving away into a new environment that you're not used to. Your support system around you is probably the most important thing at the time. So, talk to friends, make new friends. Once you've established yourself with a great group of friends, it's really easy because you have people that you can rely on. There's people to help you out constantly. And the one thing about college that people don't realize is that your friends really quickly become your family, because you're waking up every day and you're spending, your time at breakfast, at lunch, at dinner, and all your classes and hanging out with them way more than you are in high school. So I think it's really important to surround yourself with the right group of people, and, a group that, is positive and will bring you up. So that's probably the biggest part.
Yeah, don't feel like you have to shoulder the burden by yourself. So really go out of your way, meet people, and don't be afraid to, talk to them, ask for help at times when you need it. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, look, with that, you have people that you can study with as well, right? And join clubs so that you don't feel lonely. And if you're struggling through, whatever it is academically or in school life, you have somebody to help you out there. And you feel less awkward and less, scared and timid to reach out for help that way. And I think that's a really important part.
So like it's pretty obvious that like the leap from like living in a house with your parents and stuff to living on your own is a big one. But, like more specifically, like the leap from school to like actual work. Like during your time as a CS major, did you find that you had to do a lot of work outside of school in order to learn like relevant technologies and skills to be able to land internships?
Yeah, for sure. I think a lot of things, a lot of people don't realize what you learn in school oftentimes is not super applicable to job outside of school, especially at the Ivy Leagues. So when I'm taking my CS classes at the Ivy Leagues, it's not actually a lot of programming. So I'm not typing out code, it's more theoretical. So I'm learning algorithms, I'm learning discrete mathematics, and all sorts of different things that doesn't actually require me to program, which is what companies kind of expect and want you to do. And I think mainly for this reason, it's just to get a really strong and base foundational knowledge, so that it's basically conditioning you to become a leader, and be able to manage a bunch of people and solve problems instead of actually programming the basic necessities of, say, websites and software programs. But yeah, like this year, both of my classes I'm taking are theoretical computer science. So it doesn't require me to program all the time, which means I do need to go outside of my class time to practice for job interviews. So job interviews actually open up probably this month in early mid-September for next summer. So if I want to say work at Google or Facebook, then I will have to practice programming for interview questions outside in my own time on top of all my classwork.
Yeah, great. Thanks. Do you think this is like an issue only specific to like CS though? Do you like find that like your friends or like people in like other majors like don't have to deal with like having to learn outside so much?
I think that's a really good question. I think CS is definitely one of the ones that definitely is on the higher side, where you have to learn more outside, just because of that point where I added saying it's more theoretical in classwork. But then again, if you're somebody who wants to get above and beyond in your classwork, but also outside for jobs and whatnot, it's always beneficial to study in your own time. There's always different sorts of prep that you can do. So I wouldn't ever advise against that, but I do think CSs might be one of the heavier ones in terms of concentrations, just from my personal experience and talking with other people. But yeah, like if you're pre-med, there's of course you're going to want to practice this different sorts of things, such as like I know people who want to become surgeons and they practice the practicality of suturing and stitching people up, or just working on different parts of their biological skills. So it's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think like another reason why computer science tends to lead more towards the theoretical, it's just because of like the pace, the sheer pace that the technology of today are moving in.
Mhm.
For a professor to like teach you one framework, just doesn't seem to make sense, as it's just moving so quickly, right? One technology you're using today could be made redundant like in like a year or two, when a new framework or library comes along that does the job much better. So I do agree with what you say, Eric, in that like having that base knowledge and then like just having that strong understanding as your base is like incredibly important, just so that it allows you to like learn by yourself later on, which I think is like yeah, as you discussed before, a pretty big part of being a CS major. But to like kind of rewind a bit,
Mhm.
I'm putting it into like a setting for our audience, which is more applicable. As high school students, would you say that like, especially applying to like top CS schools in like say the States or Canada, Waterloo, UC
Yeah.
Berkeley, Stanford, would you say that like it's really important to have some sort of relevant work experience in that field, like at an early age, like in high school?
Yeah,
And how would you go
absolutely.
about like looking for those opportunities?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I am a firm believer that, the younger you get started through different methods, such as like gamifying STEM courses or whatnot. Um, I'm a firm believer that the earlier you get started, the better it is. So, for example, I think when you're applying to different schools in the States, every single school has a different emphasis on what they're looking for in a student. With Ivy Leagues and liberal arts schools, it's more about the character and what kind of person you are instead of being good at a skill. Whereas Stanford and Berkeley, they're more about your grade average, your CV, your resume, what have you done in high school, and what are you really, really good at. So I think that's the difference between the two different groups of schools. And then when you're applying to Canadian schools like Waterloo, it is more about your work experience as well as now I think they're incorporating a video interview where you submit a video of them asking you a question, and U of T basically asks you to problem solve in one of the interview questions as well. So they're looking for creativity. They're looking for how effective you are at how effective your solutions are, and if you can think under pressure, which is kind of just a test of judgment as well, right? But yeah, I think that especially for high schoolers, it's very important to find relevant work experience, but it doesn't mean that's all you have to do. You should make it fun. Because in high school, for example, I didn't even know I wanted to go into CS until maybe end of grade 11. So I think it's very important to keep your options open in high school as well, especially if you're applying to Canada. But what I did was I just reached out to a lot of people, just cold emailing or asking friends if they had opportunities. I think that is the best way to get, experience in high school. You never know who might be a great connection for you, and you never know who will say yes. So don't ever be afraid to ask for opportunities, because that's kind of where all of mine came from. My summer jobs this past summer were all basically me asking, hey, like, this is what I can do. Do you have a spot for me? I'd really appreciate, a favor here or there. And that's how I got my opportunity. So it definitely works out. Don't be shy. Don't be afraid to, put yourself out there, brand yourself up, make yourself look really good, and then ask for an opportunity.
Yeah, really, because you really can't expect anyone to just hand you the opportunity. Just go out and get it. And especially like in recent years for applications, I know personally like where grades have been so inflated just
Mhm.
generally over the course of COVID-19 and everything that has been happening with online learning. Um, it's really like made the AIF and just overall your extracurriculars outside school activities and your character that more important. And so I have a feeling that like, well, it's quite obvious, but like even now, I think the like difference that just maybe a summer internship can make, uh is even greater now.
Yeah.
I also have like people, personally, I would recommend not doing an internship during the school year when you're like taking your classes, because
Yeah.
that takes a pretty big toll on you. Especially if like your supervisor or whoever has you to like do a last minute thing. Um, it's pretty jam-packed and kind of uncomfortable at times. But yeah, thanks for your advice on that.
Yeah, of course. And Sean, that's a
So
really good point. I think like in high school, most important part is grades. Your grades come first because if your grades aren't there, applications are, thrown in the bin or whatever. So grades come first, and then on top of that, you add on to whatever you can't handle. Yeah.
and so like going back to like the previous question on your work in university, did Harvard like give you any certain support when you were job hunting? Uh, and so if they did, could you like kind of elaborate on how they did so?
Right. I don't think the university directly, helped me find a job, but it was the connections that I was able to make throughout my year there. So the startup job that I was working, I actually got it because a senior who graduated last year, and I got to talk, and we became pretty close. And then towards the end of the year, she asked me, hey, there's this application. I co-founded this e-commerce startup, and we're taking interns for the summer. And she gave me an application, went through the process, and that's how I kind of landed that job. So with that, that's kind of how the university helped me. Unless you're, a junior or senior, so your third or fourth year, you don't really get a lot of direct help from the university in terms of actual jobs, but they do provide a lot of great opportunities. So, a bunch of my friends went to study abroad. One of my friends went to Oxford University for the entire summer studying and basically taking courses there. A lot of friends went to Italy to study and learn the Italian language and culture. And then other friends, went all sorts of places all over the world to learn different things. So that's a great opportunity that you can take up in your first and second year. Whereas third and fourth year, that's when recruiters kind of come to the university and offer up jobs. And we have a specific, portal for us that we can find jobs specifically for the students at Harvard University, which is kind of how, Sean, that leads into your point about the university helping us, but directly, not so much. It is your job to make sure that, you're making connections and you're utilizing the resources, but they won't directly give you a job ever,
So it's just something to think about. Always have that in the back of your mind, even when you're still in first and second year.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So like Harvard, even though like Harvard doesn't like directly give you any support, like indirectly, there's still like a lot of opportunities for like exploration and work. So like what kind of person do you think would like do well, like, or be a good fit at Ivy schools and be able to like take full advantage of these opportunities?
Yeah, I think, anyone can definitely be a good fit. I don't think there's a specific type of person that would, not fit in, because the school was meant for people who are just bright and, excel at certain different things. But every Ivy League is different. So at Harvard, what I've realized is everybody here is very social and has had some sort of leadership position, right? So I think somebody that's a little bit more extroverted, open, and likes to take initiative and likes to take leadership positions, whatever that might entail, that's kind of the person that would fit in and do well here. So whereas, if you go to a smaller, more specialized place, you might fit in well if you're very good at, math, or if you're very good at science. And so it just depends what kind of environment you brand yourself and you fit into. I wouldn't say a school is great for one type of person and really bad for another type of person. From my experience, at least this past year, two people who have the same interests and have the same skill set, one might love Harvard and one might really hate it. It really just depends on your experiences here, but anyone can excel here. It's the same classes, you're just learning with people who are more passionate and love studying and love learning.
Yeah, awesome. But like, do you find that like from like people that you've talked to, of course, because like you're not in like a master's program yet, like do you find that like this tends to like close down and become like, I guess, more niche, and then I guess more into like the kind of focus school type that you mentioned before?
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you're going to your third and fourth year, and especially post-graduation, and you go into, say, master's programs or PhDs, everything is definitely going to narrow down. Liberal arts schools will start off very broad because they want to give you the freedom to change your major if you feel like the one you're in right now doesn't fit. So I don't declare what my concentration is until end of this semester. So say I go through my first week of CS classes and I say, I absolutely hate this. I still have time to change and like take classes for, say, pre-med, which is awesome. And so what that means is after this year, then it'll start to specialize and narrow into very specific topics, which is where, that's where I talk about you can be really good at one thing and then excel. And so this school might be better for you.
Yeah, great point there. So kind of like going back a little bit, to your senior year of high school, if you could have prepared a little bit differently for your first year of college, now that you've already went through all of the learning curves and everything, how would you recommend students who are looking to study engineering or maybe more specifically software engineering or computer science to go about not only admissions but like just preparing for first year of classes?
Yeah, I think for me, what helped me the most was actually my involvement in robotics. So on robotics team, it was a lot of fun. You got experience in electrical engineering, mechanical engineering, CS, and all sorts of different things, right? And why I thought that was super good is because I had so much fun in my robotics team. I put effort into learning different skills that eventually prepared me for university without even feeling like it was work. So that's kind of my advice for everyone in high school is to join clubs that you like and not to join them because you think it would look great on a resume. Because if you join a club that you're passionate about and you really enjoy doing, all of the skills that you gain out of it is going to be so much more, and you're going to have a good time doing it, and you're going to put in more effort into, soft and hard skills than you won't even realize it. Whereas if you're just doing something for the resume or for, the application, you won't really be able to show what kind of person you are through in your application. And with that, I guess I should mention that the application is a lot of the US applications and Canadian applications now are essay based. So when you are writing your essay and you're writing about something that you don't really care about, it's really hard to make yourself, sound impressive. Whereas if you're passionate about it, you have your creativity shines through, you're talking about things you love, it's super easy to do. It makes your life easier, it makes your application stronger. And so I think to sum that up, just do what you love and find different activities in high school that also correlate to a field that you think you might want to do.
Yeah, well, that's great. But another huge part of school is we've talked a lot about education so far, right? But another large part of schools is their culture. So how do you find the overall culture of Harvard? And maybe I know you said the type of students is very broad at Harvard, but there's still going to be that type of students. How do they impact the newer students in things like finding friends and just fitting in at school?
Yeah, no, I think that's a really good point. Victor, you brought up there's all sorts of people here. There are the people who don't really like to go out and like to do certain things, whereas there's other people who just love to go out and socialize, and there's people who like to play sports. It's people who like to play video games. It's all about finding your group. But I think the culture here is great. Throughout my first year, I was really surprised to see that Harvard wasn't just full of kids who, were in the libraries 24/7 and people who are kind of, really braggy and, not super humble, but that was actually not the case at all. I find everybody here is really humble. No one, kind of brands himself to someone who they're not. And you're going to find that everybody at these schools are their first year, they're nervous, right? Everybody's nervous. And so I think that's one thing people don't realize. But the culture here is great. I think I was really lucky first month of last year, my first year. I found a really great group of kids who I'm still friends with today. And so I think it's super easy to find a group of friends at school this big. Even though Harvard's one of the smaller universities, I think if you go to a different school, you're going to be able to find a group that you fit in well into. It's just kind of more about putting yourself out there until you do.
Yeah, awesome. It's great to know that, like people at Harvard aren't like the stereotypical, like, nerds or like rich people that like are way too like arrogant or braggy. Yeah, it's nice to know that like, everyone's really great and humble, and yeah, it just makes you excited like if you manage to go there. Like also, like you mentioned that like you did clubs like robotics in high school and stuff. Have you joined any clubs like at Harvard, and like how do you think they've like impacted your experience there?
Yeah, for sure. I think first year I didn't join as many clubs as I wanted to, just because I was more so focused on getting into, the rhythm of things and making sure that my school and studying was number one. But I did join a club, or it's more of an organization. It's the Harvard Crimson Business Board. And so the Harvard Crimson is Harvard's official newspaper, and it's a student-run business that's, I think, worth over $1 million or $2 million now. But it's a student-run organization, and I'm on the business board, which means I'm helping the newspaper advertise and sell advertisements. And it's more of a business like side of things, right? So that's been a lot of fun. I did it all of last year, and I'm going to do it again this year. I think, the extracurricular activities really enrich my college experience because it's the people that you meet in it. I have my friend group that is outside of Harvard, the Crimson, and outside of classes that I hang out with every single day. But then when I go to the Crimson and join this club and do this club, I have a whole different set of friends that, have different values and different, we have different passions and whatnot. And it's just a different group of people that you can share experiences with, which I think is really amazing. It's really cool to see all sorts of different people, coming together to do the same thing with different ideas and whatnot. But this year, I want to kind of join some more clubs that is more specific to computer science and to engineering and the STEM side of things. So I'm planning on joining the Harvard Product Lab, which is more of a product managing, club where they put you on different case studies and different projects, and you try to make a business work. And then there's also Harvard Computer Society, which basically uses programming and computer science for social good in the communities, which is really exciting.
For like any of the clubs that like you're going to join, or like any clubs that like you just know of in Harvard, are there any of them that are like selective or have like certain requirements like that you have to meet to get in?
Yeah. So all three of these actually have an interview process and an application process. So they're not as competitive as you might think, but they are still competitive. So for example, the Computer Society, you have to write an application, and then you have to go through an interview and then you may or may not be selected. Harvard Crimson's the same way. You write an application, and then you go through a set of 2 stages of interviews before you get to know if you get it in or not. But there are a lot of clubs who are open to everyone. There's no selective process, so it's about half and half, I would say.
All right, so like a lot of the clubs that you experience at school are really like, it seems like focused on that leadership aspect of things, playing a role in the community and really just looking to not only just make an impact on the students' lives, but also the others within the community, right? And
Yeah.
so you also talked about your experience in robotics, right? Um, I know I know that like robotics team, like each individual person has their own role, right? So it's not often that like the entire team will consist of programmers, right? You have a team focusing on mechanical systems, the other team may be focusing on, writing the code for the robot, so it's really like an entire group activity, right? So it's kind of hard to like maybe have for you to zone in on a specific topic that you want to get into since someone else is already covering that. And so did you participate in any other STEM-based clubs in high school to realize that, oh, I actually really enjoy writing code and I could potentially, make a career out of this?
Yeah, I that's a really good question. I think for me, not really. I think my interest for code and programming actually came from my first year in college. Because like I said, first year of college is very, very broad and it's general. And so it allows you to explore all sorts of different subjects, I guess. I think in high school, I actually thought I wanted to go pre-med for the longest time. So a lot of the things I was doing was bio and chem. But first year college allows you to, so there's introductory classes for every subject. There's an introductory CS course, introductory chem course, and anything you can think of, there's an introductory course to it. But I think in high school, if you do really find something that you love, so for example, say robotics, right? And you say electrical engineer is the one for me. I would think you should do as many things as you can to maybe see what part of electrical engineering, go more specific into it. Other than that, I think sticking to one thing and making yourself really good at it is the most important thing. Colleges don't absolutely love that you do too many things and aren't very good at any of them. They actually really, really enjoy seeing that you're really, really good at one thing that you're passionate about. And, that makes you stand out.
Right. And so in high school, we also talked about, getting relevant work experience in high school. And so, would you recommend, maybe doing side projects or like, just participate in hackathons to be like, productive in that sort of sense in searching for like experience in high school?
Yeah, for sure. I think hackathons and different events are great, especially the one-time ones where you can just say, yeah, I did it and I loved it, right? Because that's not a long-term commitment. I think you can do as many short-term commitment things as you want, as long as it's not interfering with anything. That's a great way to gain experience and maybe some more knowledge into what your chosen activities, entail. I think that's really great. It's a really great way to, try out different things in a short period of time that, allows you to really go in depth into, say CS or bio. So yeah, that's a really great point, Sean.
Yeah, because for me personally, I had a couple of friends themselves who landed, research roles, maybe one of them at the U of A this year as a senior going to Waterloo, and another one a couple of years ago at U of C in his junior year of high school. So yeah, I feel like just doing the most to like kind of just find out where your abilities lie, and then
Yeah.
just, because you have a fair amount of time in high school, especially in the summer. I think that's really a really good time for you to like, allocate time to go towards, creating maybe a more passion project that can show off your not only passion but like skill in that area. And so this is also tying back to how you were like saying you wanted to go into medicine
Mhm.
for the longest part in high school, right? But like in college, a lot of people also make decisions to switch out of their majors too. Would you say like switching majors is, especially in the liberal arts college for you, would you say a lot of your friends have done that?
Yeah, I think it's a very common thing here in the States. It's different in Canada because in Canada, you're applying to the program and not the school. But in the States, you're applying to the school and not the program. So especially like where I'm like liberal arts classes and you don't declare your major until the end of first semester, second year, it gives a lot of opportunity for people to switch. A lot of my friends came into the first year not even knowing what they wanted to do. So for example, I had a friend who thought he was definitely going into like history and English, but ended up doing CS with me. Other friends were the opposite. They were thinking they were going to do engineering, but they went into English and history instead. And you'll hear a lot of stories about people actually even changing in third to fourth year about their major. As long as you have all of the requirements done by the classroom requirements done by the end of your university 4 years, then there's so much choice for you to get whatever concentration and diploma you want. But I do think a lot of friends of mine have changed and have had second thoughts on their major. So yeah, I think that's a very common thing in the States. But like I said, in Canada, it's a little bit more of a difficult process, but it's still doable. So don't think that like you're stuck doing something you really don't like. If you don't like it, try to switch into something different that you think you will.
Yeah, I think that's one of the perks of going to like one of those Ivy Leagues, right? You have the ability to switch around.
Mhm.
Depending on like where you go in Canada, it might be a bit harder to get into the desired program of your choice if it's like not the thing you applied for. Just a personal anecdote, one of my former classmates, um, she went to Columbia, right, originally for electrical engineering, but in her
Mhm.
second year, she decided to transfer into computer science. And so she was telling me basically just how it was very competitive to get into CS, at least transferring, even though from a very similar, very similar major.
Mhm.
So I guess in that sense, um, it will require a lot more work in order to, get into one of the more popular and lucrative programs. Yeah.
Yeah.
With like the difference that you see, like with like the difference in US and Canada systems and how like you pick majors first or like pick majors later, do you find that like with this makes one thing harder or another? And also like specifically for like jobs, do you find that like, well, obviously like you haven't done, I don't think you've done any jobs in Canada, but like with like your friends and like personal like experience from them, do you find that this makes it harder or easier? And like, is there a difference or not?
Sorry, I'm just going to clarify. Is the question like difference in working in the States and Canada?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is a difference because it's all about the people you're surrounded with, right? The environment you're in. It's not a bad difference. I think in terms of living and, living in Canada and the United States, it's very similar. It's not like we're moving from, Eastern, like in Europe or Asia or something to the United States. So the culture shock and all of that, it's very like there's no culture shock and the culture is very similar. The only difference is I think when you're working, say at, Google or Facebook at New York, it's the people you're surrounded with. You're surrounded by people from all sorts of different places in the world, who went to, prestigious universities throughout the United States. They're very skilled. They're, have different passions and traditions, right? So I think that's the main part. It's the people you're surrounded with. Whereas in say Calgary, when I was interning, it was a lot of Calgarians, so it was more, more narrow. There wasn't a whole lot of diversity in terms of education and skills and experiences, which is the main thing that I think is what I experienced at least. For example, this last internship I was working at, one of them, so we had 8 people on board on the team. One was from Chicago, one was from Princeton, one was from Harvard as well. But that's kind of the main part where I think the difference is. But in terms of actual day-to-day living, it's not all that different.
Do you find that there's like
Yeah,
any sort of, oh, sorry, Sean. Oh,
No, it's fine. It's fine. Please proceed.
yeah. So like, do you feel like there's any sort of like added pressure or some sort of like higher competitiveness when you like do an internship in America or not because of like the larger pool of talent, like the more like diverse group of people that you're maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's probably the most competitive out of anywhere in the world, and just that's objectively speaking. But that's not a bad thing, right? That's a very good thing. So if you get into a job that's highly competitive, that means you're working with some of the best in the world, and that not only is an enriching experience, but it makes you strengthen your own personal skills. So I think that's a really good point. It's definitely true, and I think it's a very, very unique situation to be in.
All right. Thanks for that, Eric. We had a couple questions earlier on about your high school experience and how that led you to, get into Harvard University and, how you might have done things differently and some tips and tricks for people who are looking to find out if they're interested in STEM or how would they
Mm.
prepare to enter, university for STEM. So we have a question from the chat here. They said, "Hi, Eric. I think there are some parents who are interested in your K-12 education." Yeah, I bet from the comments, yeah. What is your experience / footprint in academic, extracurricular, and leadership, like in elementary, junior, and senior high? Well, elementary, that might be a bit too early, but yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good question. And Sean, you're right. I think elementary isn't the time like to really focus down and like, oh, you're prepping for university. That's not the time. I think in elementary, it's really important to bring exposure to different things. So, like I've mentioned in the past, I founded a nonprofit, right? And that's all about early exposure to STEM. When I say that, it's not about setting a path into STEM from elementary, but because the traditional school system only focuses doesn't focus very much on certain topics, I think bringing exposure through different games and through different videos and whatnot for elementary students is very important. It also makes the transition into junior high and high school much easier when you do study certain topics like chemistry and physics and biology, right? Because in elementary you never even studied any of those things. It makes it very difficult, especially for grade 4, 5, and 6 students where junior high is coming up very quickly. In my experience, I think junior high is when it really starts to become more important to join leadership positions and work on different experiences and studying habits in academics. Although it's still super early on. It's still so early that it's not something I think it matters the most, right? It's more about building your character and creating a strong foundation for yourself in high school. But personally, in junior high, I studied, but not all the time. It was just enough. I put in enough effort to make sure that I did well in school, but I had a lot of free time outside of school to just do different things that I liked. I was playing hockey. I hung out with my friends. I would travel and do all sorts of things. But also in school, I was a part of the Leaders Council. I was doing different activities. I was playing volleyball. I was playing basketball. I was just doing things that I really wanted to do. And I think through that, it's really important because it kind of told me what I liked, what I didn't like, what I was good at, and what I wasn't good at, right? So it was kind of exploration stage for myself. And with that, going into high school, it made going into high school a lot easier because then when high school comes, grade 10 and 11 are super important for university. When I got to there, I kind of knew what I was good at and what I wasn't good at. So time management became easier. I would put more time into classes such as, physics and biology, where I needed more time to study and I needed more time to kind of understand the concepts. Whereas math and, chemistry came really easy to me. So I would put in enough effort to do well. And then, time management like that. And in high school, I was a prefect, which was basically the leaders council in my school. It was 2 grade 10s, 4 grade 11s, and 8 grade 12s who made up of this council. And I think it was really great because I worked with, students of all different types of ages and through different grades to plan activities, to lead assemblies, to present, any information that we needed for the school. So that was my major leadership position in high school. And in grade 12, I was the head prefect, which is two members of the council that basically led all of the team meetings and made sure everything was going smoothly. And that was a really enriching experience. But other than that, like I did robotics and I played volleyball. And so those were kind of my 3 main things that I committed myself to because I knew that's what I liked from my exposure in elementary and junior high, where I kind of grew as a person and a student.
Yeah, I feel like parents have a tendency to kind of push their children, especially in those early stages,
Mm-hmm.
kind of a very overzealous approach.
Yeah.
I feel like your progression was very natural in the sense that you didn't do anything just for the sake of doing it, right? You did it
Right.
because you genuinely enjoyed it, and I feel like admission officers, they saw that within you.
I
And
think,
to
yeah, I
touch
think
on that,
to an extent, oh, Sean, sorry if you don't mind. I
no, no,
think to
no,
an
please, please.
extent, I think to an extent, yes, that's very important, especially in high school. But I don't, I don't say don't do it, because in junior high and elementary, I was put into, say, math courses, like Kumon or just math and advanced courses. And I was also playing piano, which wasn't my choice because you're too young to make choices, right? But I think that's actually really great as long as it's not overwhelming. One or two things I think is actually great, because my math skills, although it came easy to me, but I was above my class in math because of the extra math classes that I took, right? Even though I really disliked them at the time, it was super beneficial for me throughout high school. So things like that, I don't, disprove of, as long as it's to a manageable, amount. I think when it becomes overwhelming for the student, that's when it becomes a problem. But
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree on that. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure, learning like courses early. As long as it's within reason, right? An extra 1 or 2 hours today for a kid. It's like it does pay off in the end.
of
And
course, yeah.
like for like leadership positions, as you talked about before, yeah, school is a great way for any like junior high school students. School is a great way to get involved with clubs
Mhm.
and really just like as long as you like put in the work, I feel like you can almost always find some sort of job or like role you can write about at school.
Yeah.
But yeah, would you also say that there's a bit of a difference in the course? Would you say that there, like in your experience as working as a software engineer, that you've had to like depending on like the company you've been with, your roles have changed a lot?
Yeah, of course. I think it's also just different companies have different, aims and goals, right? So in high school, I interned with Adabotics. I'm not sure if you've heard of it, but it's basically a warehousing company. It's a 3D design and modeling company that has been leading Calgary with, new technologies. So when I was working with them, it was more so about research and development. So, you know, research into new softwares instead of actually using it, and researching the softwares into, what might be better for the company. But this last year, it was an e-commerce site, right? So I was working with programs I've never worked with to make sure that we could buy and sell things on our website properly, and, different problems and things that come with that. But work experience is work experience. I think it's great regardless. Especially working at a startup, I think it's really wonderful because you do have to, do all sorts of different things. It's a lot of experience all at once, so it may be, a little bit more time consuming, but I was doing everything from UI to UX and, software from the back end, working with selling portals and, also promoting our business and working with people and going on site to talk to people. So I think that is the best part about a startup, because there's so many things that you're doing. Again, it is the exposure that matters, right? It lets you know what you like and what you're good at and what you might want to do as a career later on.
Since like you mentioned that like you were taking like CS and like econ, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, that is. And I guess we can bring it back to changing majors. I'm still doing CS, but I'm no longer doing economics. I think after taking a first year class of economics, it just wasn't something that I loved, and I don't think I want to do it continuing on. So I might look into going into almost a psychology neuroscience track along with CS. Yeah.
Yeah, but like it allowed you to like get into like an e-commerce site, and like how do you feel that like different majors, like for example, like like finance, like medicine, bio, like how do you feel like they mesh with CS, and like how do you like what different opportunities do you think that these combinations would be able to like give you?
Yeah, absolutely. I think with CS you can mesh it with anything. Because with CS it's newer technologies, right? Everything requires software nowadays. So that's kind of why. But especially a lot of universities now offer like it's called a computer science and cognitive science dual. Like it basically meshes those two together. So that's kind of something that I'm looking into doing now. I'm taking all of my CS classes, but I'm also taking a neurobiology class. I'm taking a psychology class. taking artificial intelligence classes. And when it meshes together, basically it's doing something similar to what I did at the lab at Columbia this summer. It's using technology and, softwares to run simulations of treatments and different, processes of whatever the company is doing. So it allows us to not actually have to test it on real humans. We're running the simulations more accurately with new software. But you can also mix it with econ, right? Fintech is a huge thing now, and especially like New York and different parts of the world. I know Israel, for example, is huge into fintech, and different sorts of software startups are starting up there. But CS is there, and it's the most. I would argue it's one of the most useful majors in the future, because everything is shifting towards software. There's an endless amount of possibilities into what you can mix it with, and there's skills in that course that can be applicable to whatever else you want to do. But yeah, I think there's a lot of schools now that start mixing CS with different sorts of majors as well.
Yeah, dual degrees are becoming pretty popular, especially like how you talked about like finance and CS. That's a pretty common pairing between the two.
Yeah.
All right, we're currently at 10 a.m., 10:01 to be exact. And so right now we're gonna open the panel to some questions from the chat. So if there's anything we didn't touch base on, or you'd like to maybe get Eric to expand more upon, you can type your question in the chat and we'll answer it for you. We have a question right here. And so the question is, how do you purposefully improve your presenting skills / public speaking skills?
That's a good question. I think for me, I was actually taking speech, like not speech presentation, but it was almost like drama. And that's kind of where my public speaking and presenting skills like came from. Like drama class was basically I learn a play and I present it, and I go to a recital and I present my play in front of an audience, right? So I think that really helped, because it gets rid of stage fright. It allows you to have experience presenting in front of a lot of people, which not many people get to do in the school semester. But I think it's a great way is speech and debate as well, because all of my friends who did speech and debate are great speakers and they're great presenters. It teaches you all the skills you need to captivate an audience, and use all the right words to make sure that your flow of speech is really smooth. So I think speech and debate, drama classes are great. Yeah, and those are probably the top two choices that I know of.
Yeah, because I think really paid off just in the way you speak. You're such a very eloquent presenter. So yeah, let me just check really quick if we have any more questions. Yeah, so just to all our participants, don't be shy to ask. Ideally, we'd prefer you to type it out into the chat, but if you would like to unmute yourself and speak, you can also do so. Oh, I have a question right here. So when did you begin writing your application for US schools, and did you have a counselor to advise you in the process?
Yes, that's a great question. When did I start? I started pretty early. I would have started, let's see, like January, February. I would have started like 4 or 5 months before applications, because it's a really hefty process, and every school that you apply to requires a different essay. So I ended up writing maybe 20 to 25 essays for all of the US schools that I applied to. And your common application is a 650-word essay that you should be working and revising most, throughout different, like every single stage of your application, you should be revising that essay so that it's near perfect, because that's the main essay that gets sent to every single US school. So I started applying for 4 or 5 months before the deadline. And even then I worked till, the very last day. So that's kind of the crazy part about US applications. But Sean, just remind me of the question again. It's how did I prepare? And
Yeah, so like, did you actively have a counselor to advise you in
Right.
your process of applying? Yeah.
Yes, I did. I used a university counselor to help me, fill out the applications and advise me on, what to say and what not to say. I think that's very important because as Canadians, we don't have a lot of experience, and we don't have a lot of support in our schools to apply to US schools. So a counselor who knows the application inside and out is so helpful. I think it's very beneficial. And I definitely wouldn't have been able to do this without my counselor. So I've mentioned this before, but yeah, I think it's a very smart investment if you are thinking of applying to US schools.
Essays for sure. It's a major difference between applying in the US and Canada. A lot of Canadian schools, um, their applications aren't as extensive in the sense where you have to write so many essays. Like schools like UBC and Waterloo,
Mhm.
have began to also sort of ride that train.
Yeah,
However, no, right, it's not every single school will ask you to for multiple essays, but
yeah.
it just shows that and with admissions so competitive in the US that really learning how to present yourself and get your point across is becoming incredibly important, especially in this admissions process.
Oh,
So
absolutely.
Victor,
Yeah,
would
I
you like?
think, sorry, like Waterloo and Toronto, especially if you're applying for, I think it's software engineering, computer engineering in Waterloo and engineering science in Toronto, right? They require essays and they require video video submissions as well. So Canadian schools are also going that route, but I'll put it in perspective. I finished all of my Canadian applications in roughly a month. So I think that kind of puts into perspective that it is a little easier and less time consuming, but you do still have to put in just as much effort into branding yourself. It's just a little bit different. Canadian schools kind of care about the straight hard facts of you as a student and what you have done and all of your accomplishments. Whereas American essays kind of want you to tell a story and make it creative. And yeah, it's more of a narrative instead of the resume style that Canada wants.
I'll have to start worrying about that and as soon as school starts too.
Yeah, yeah.
Super excited for that. Victor, would you like to take on the next question from the audience?
Yeah, sure. So I'll just take on the first one I see. So someone in the chat asked, "Hi Eric, did you play video games in high school? How long did you play every day? Do you think that playing video games affects your studying? And do you have any advice like for time management to give high school students who wish to play video games during high school?"
Yeah, no, I think that's a great question. I get that from, friends and parents all the time, but I did play video games, just not a ton. I played a couple of games and, whenever I was hanging out with friends, we would play video games. So I definitely did play video games. Um, I think it I think it depends on what you mean by affecting your study. As long as you're playing a reasonable amount and you have your priorities, then it doesn't affect your studies, the actual video game part of it. What affects your studies is if you don't have the self-control to stop playing or to finish your work before you start playing. That is definitely, a problem. I think for me, I only played after I finished all of my schoolwork and I had my extracurriculars, done and, anything else that I wanted to do. It was just something that I could do in my free time when I had absolutely nothing else to do and I was, bored and I wanted to just, let loose for a little bit. But it was very low on my priority list. And I think that's very important to keep in mind and to be cognizant about if you are, you know, studying and you are, really busy outside of school as well.
Yeah, great.
Yeah,
Yeah. Oh, sorry.
excellent. Get your priorities straight. I kind of suck at video games, so I don't find joy in it anymore.
Yeah.
Victor, would you like to take the next question?
All right. Yeah, sure. So the next one is, why did you decide to go to university in the US instead of Canada?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I think for the United States, I kind of chose that because of the name brand, initially. I think I didn't know a whole lot about the culture and, you know, um, the classes here. So I applied knowing that, it's a very prestigious school. I applied to the US knowing that, it opens up more opportunities after university and graduation. So that's why I applied. But after coming here, I think it was the right decision because it was just, it's great connections. There's a lot of different things like the liberal arts colleges do, like the freedom in classes. It gives you a lot of freedom. It lets you take what you want to take, and it gives you, a lot of flexibility in what you want to learn. Whereas, say, University of Waterloo, systems design engineering, which is the program that I applied to, very frigid. It's very, set in stone already. These are the classes that they set out for you to take. You don't have a lot of options. So that's the main reason I decided to go to university in the United States. And so far, I'm really enjoying it. I think it was the right choice.
Yeah, so like generally like you feel like there's way more like creative freedom in like the US, and like I guess like in a way, even though like it might be a better school, like less pressure because you have more time to like choose what you actually want to do.
Yeah, for sure. It gives you, say you can, so for me this semester, I'm taking 2 really hard classes and 2, moderate to easy classes because I have the option to, and I know that's going to work for me. So yeah.
Yeah, no, a lot of my friends can't relate. Waterloo Software Eng is brutal, I've heard.
Yeah.
We had a really specific question. So they're asking, where did you take AI classes, things, and how much AI did you learn before you go to university? So I'm guessing like how much data science did you know, if you did know any before you actually started, studying it in university, if you have?
Yeah.
Bit of a specific question.
Yeah, it's very specific. I actually didn't know any data science or AI skills before coming to university. My first exposures were here, and I haven't even taken a class yet, actually. It's more so just talking with friends and older, people in junior or senior year of university, because there's prerequisites to take those classes, and you can't take them until junior or senior year usually. But it's always great to watch videos. I love talking about AI. I love learning about it. A lot of people here who have worked with companies using artificial intelligence. So it's, machine learning and our AI are really great. It's super interesting. So all of my experience there is kind of just free time YouTube videos. Nothing super in depth yet. So can't help you there. I'm sorry.
If I may add something, because like I mean I have like not a lot of experience, like a tiny bit of experience. Like you can just go on sites like Udemy, Skillshare that have like stuff for like Python, like using TensorFlow, and like which is like a thing that for like data science, but like you can use it to like build like neural nets, that kind of stuff. Like brilliant.org, I know they have a courses. And also if you just like want to understand like neural networks, like the math behind how they work, three blue, one brown on YouTube. Like they have a really good set of not courses, like videos that just explain like the math behind how like neural networks work. And it's really interesting if you want to learn about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, for sure. Like, and I think like for computer vision and stuff, like some libraries or like stuff you could use, like OpenCV. Yeah, you talked about TensorFlow just then, Victor. Like PyTorch, Keras, you can find like tons of support for this stuff online. Which is really just like the beauty of CS and the internet is like really like you have to take a course to like gain some surface level understanding. Like you can like gain a lot more than surface level understanding through these kinds of resources. So I guess to answer your question, Rita, just do it. Pull out the computer and just type away, just search up. Oh, this is a bit of a weird question. What do you do if you don't finish your work?
Interesting. I'm assuming that's just like schoolwork. But I think in high school it was very difficult to not finish your work. You kind of had to because you were looking for that letter grade, right, or the percentage grade. So you just have to grind through it. There were a couple nights where I stayed up super late doing work, and it's just sometimes that's just how it is. And I don't think that changes university. And if so, I think that's actually more so the case. At least in high school, it was a little easier to get extensions, and you were, you had more personal connections to your teachers, and so it was a little easier to get extensions in high school. But in university, like no one really cares if you need an extension or not, unless it's for a very legitimate reason. So if it looks like you're not finishing your work, you're either just going to have to, take the marks off for being late, or you're going to have to really push through and, have a late night and just get it done. Yeah, I think that's all I can say for that.
Pretty straightforward. Either you do the work or you face the consequences.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, yeah. Scratch, coding, Python, Minecraft, Roblox exploration would be very helpful.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. Like, I think it is helpful. Scratch is great for little kids. I've seen kids. I was leading a summer camp that was about, programming for kids in grades 1 to 6. And some of these kids were building these insane stories and games on Scratch that I probably wouldn't even know how to do. So I think Scratch is perfect for allowing kids to get exposure into that programming mindset. It's drag and drop, which makes it super easy, but it's the way of thinking that's really important for kids to get into early. So I think Scratch is really great for young kids. Python is probably great to get into for high schoolers because it's so applicable in real life situations and jobs. So that would be great to learn when you have the time. Whereas Minecraft and Roblox, I think they're great video games. Like, they're fun, and occasionally I still play it with friends. Like, if it's something that we want to do, I would be careful with it in the sense that I wouldn't use it as an excuse to say, oh, like, I'm learning while playing a video game. It's more so just a video game than anything. But for kids, it's great because it allows them to, show off their creativity. It allows them to, really explore different things, and you can do really cool things in Minecraft, and it helps you to think. But yeah, I don't think it's the best way in terms of academics, but I do think it's a great way to have some fun while learning.
I think those are all very good points. Yeah. I have another question from Harrison. And so Victor, would you like to take this one?
Yeah, sure. So give me a second. So Harrison asked, what average grades did you get in junior high for like your academic courses?
Oh, that's a good question. Academics in junior high, I think it was like overall grade point average was probably a 97, if not 98% in junior high. But it was a little bit lower in grade 9 just because of English class. Didn't do super well, but I think I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was probably around 96, 97 for the 3 years in junior high.
Not Alberta English class in high school is kind of killer. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
I'm gonna one up that question. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
No, go ahead, John.
I'm gonna one up that question and ask what you got in high school.
In high school, I applied to university with a 96, 96.4. So I couldn't get it rounded up to 97, but 96 was what I applied with.
That's still really good though, for sure. All right, we have a parent here who is raising their hand. We have Jane Tsai. If you want to unmute yourself, you can do that, Jane. Otherwise, you can just type your question in the chat. Would you like to unmute yourself?
Okay, there we go. Thank you. Yeah, I think just a short question on the lighter note that you were born and raised in Calgary, Alberta. We know that the little bit of culture here is quite conservative. They even call us the Canadian redneck. And so when you go to especially Ivy League school, Harvard over there, so how do you find the culture over there? And they look at a Canadian more that just personally, I know you said you felt a lot of diversity over there, people from all walks of life. But I know that there was specific, the tendency, I know a lot of Ivy League schools are kind of very pro
Like, yeah.
liberal, pro-liberal.
Mhm.
Yeah, so just I would like to, because you have been there for 2 years, the thought, any takes on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. The politics of it is very difficult. I know, yeah, you're absolutely right. Coming from Alberta, we're very, even, if you are a liberal in Alberta, it's very hard to maintain it because you're growing up with so many different conservatives and, people who are a little bit more right-winged. But coming here, that wasn't really a problem for me. There are people who are way more conservative than I am, and there's people who are way more liberal than I am, right? So, like I said, the diversity helps out. It's really about finding, a group of people. And if you find the right group of people, no one really cares about your political views and how you experience that. I'm sorry, is that what you're asking, or are you asking more so about,
Thank you for your feedback. Yes, I really appreciate that. I actually, to be more specific, is that how does Harvard School, the whole, the school over there, the main, kind of direction, the leaning was not, I'm glad that your answer can help me to ask my question more specific.
Yeah, I'm glad. Of course, I'm always happy to help. But yeah, Harvard, and I would say 95% of the universities in America are all very liberal. Not very liberal, but definitely liberal, state of mind. But you're going to find very little highly conservative universities other than maybe some places in Texas or Florida. But even then, the institution itself will be more left-wing.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that time.
You're welcome.
Yeah, in my personal opinion, I feel like no matter where you're from in Canada, I feel like the right wingness, it doesn't hold a candle to like, some of maybe the deep southern states. But yeah,
both
definitely
ends.
more of a
Yeah, both ends of the political spectrum are much more intense and exaggerated in the United States. So, but like I said, it really isn't a problem as long as you grew up around great people. It doesn't matter what your political views are. You're gonna fit in. It shouldn't be a problem at all. Yeah.
Yeah, just keep open-minded. We have a question here. So they asked, when did you start having an interest towards AI and computer science? Thanks. I think we briefly talked about this, but yeah, if you could expand more on that, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. So I think robotics, like I said, is the starting point for everything. That's when I really knew STEM was the thing for me. I loved doing everything I did in robotics, from electrical, mechanical engineering to the programming, and the actual competing part of the robotics was so much fun. But I think that's where it started from, and then after that is first year university. The first couple of months going to the lectures, hearing an actual professor teach me different CS courses and CS subjects, and talking with my friends, and going to different sections and hearing thoughts and problem solving with all these really bright kids. That's when it really solidified in my mind that I like to do CS, because it was super, like, it was just super fun. It was fun. It felt like it's almost like reaching an epiphany. It was something that I just knew, that's what I kind of want to do further on, especially for a career-wise. Yeah.
I'm gonna ask, okay, wait, hold on. All right, so the same person asked, I think you talked about this last year, but they asked, may I ask if you took any IB or AP classes in high school?
Yes, good question. No, I didn't, but only for the reason that my school didn't offer any AP or IB classes. But also with that, I think IB is great, but it's not the most important thing. Only do it. Only do a full IB or a partial IB if you have the capacity to do it and can maintain good grades. Because truth is, even if you don't do it, you can still have a great shot at going into a great university. But IB is super helpful for first year university. That's why you should take it. It's for future prep and not for an application, and not for the resume.
Yeah, I think AP classes are great too. My school offers AP, so I just take AP. I've never been
A lot of
IB, but
Americans
like,
take AP as well, and
yeah,
people seem to like it a lot. Yeah.
yeah. I think IB, like a lot of the class, like I heard like research and essays are a huge part of it. So I think that's something that could really help in second a university. Um before I get to the next before Victor, you can take the next question, but this is my own personal question. So for robotics, did you do like Vex robotics or like was it like first?
First, FRC.
Oh, I
Yeah.
mean, oh, you guys had money, huh?
No, no, not at all, man. We were a very new team, so our robots always look super janky, and like we were competing against these really, really nice robots in our thing that we built for under $1,000. So it was a lot of fun though. It was like it took
Under a thousand
different.
dollars? Well, bro,
Yeah, we didn't have money.
I thought
We did
FRC
not have money.
I thought FRC was expensive as heck. All right. Yeah, Victor, you got the next question.
So Harrison asked, do prestigious Canadian universities require leadership skills? Well, I'm guessing he means in relation to American schools, because
Yeah. No, of course. I think they do. Of course they do. It doesn't require, right? I think nothing requires leadership skills. It's just very beneficial to have in this day and age, because that's what stands out to people. People want leaders, future leaders and leaders of America, and leaders of Canada. So it's always a beneficial thing to say you're skilled in. But I don't think it requires anything. A lot of universities in Canada still only look at your grades. So for example, like U of A, I think University of Saskatchewan, you just have to send in your final grades and maybe write a sentence or two, and that's your application. So it really depends on where you're applying in Canada. Whereas U of T probably requires a more diverse application, and they would definitely appreciate some leadership skills.
Yeah, like any of the more competitive schools, in Ontario, UBC,
Yeah,
those ones, McGill, Waterloo, like I'm pretty sure they all require in one form or another some sort of extra informational form that really details your experience outside of academics.
yeah, for sure.
Oh, Emily Tan asked, "Hi Eric, have you applied for a scholarship to Harvard?"
That's a really good question. So that's a great question to talk about now. I think a lot of people don't know that the Ivy Leagues offer financial aid, which is need-based and not merit-based, which means anybody who gets into these universities are should not worry about the financial cost of it. So say you can't afford to go to Harvard completely, they will actually give you aid and help you pay for tuition. And it's not a loan. You don't ever have to pay them back. It's more of a gift for you to attend their school. So it's need-based financial aid, which a lot of people don't realize is offered at Ivy League.
I'm a bit curious about schools in the US, so I'm going to ask the question myself. So excluding, schools from the Ivy League, what are some schools that you recommend, Canadian students apply to if they're interested in, technology that aren't necessarily, within the Ivy League?
Within the Ivy League?
Not within, like excluding the Ivy League. What schools would you recommend
Okay.
Canadian students who
Yeah.
are interested in?
Yeah, I think there's a ton of great schools. So in my experience after researching, any STEM, like I was into STEM, right? So I was applying for STEM. I think UC Berkeley was a top choice of mine. That's a great university. So UC Berkeley is definitely up there. Carnegie Mellon for computer science is always a really great choice. What I learned after coming here is Northeastern and Northwestern are also great schools for engineering and computer science. And then, of course, I think for business and whatnot, UCLA is great. And then you have your universities like Vanderbilt for pre-med. Yeah, so I think there's a ton of great schools. It's just when you look outside the Ivy League, you have to make sure that the financial cost of it, especially for us international Canadian students, right, is worth what you're getting out of the education.
Oh, sorry, I was muted for a moment. Yeah, yeah, I guess yeah, a lot of the UCs are pretty good.
Mhm.
Yeah. So we have a question again from Harrison. Victor, would you like to take this one again? And since we're already at 10:29, we're almost done. This will be our final question, just because we want to respect Eric's time and all of the volunteers' time today. But yeah, go along with the final question, Victor.
Yeah, so Harrison asked, like, how did you stand out on like your Harvard application? Like, how do you make yourself look different?
I think it's a really good question. To be honest, I'm not 100% sure. I don't think anyone can be, unless you're nationally ranked or you have some sort of really prestigious award, which I have neither of. But what I did was I just took personal experiences and I made I wrote almost like a story that I think people will want to read. But what made it really easy for my application was everything I did in high school and everything I did in terms of building a resume were things that I was super passionate in and things I love doing. So when I'm writing, that essay about robotics or writing that essay about my travels and, traveling the world, it made it super easy because it was all things that I really, really genuinely loved and enjoyed. So I think that's the key part. When you're doing something, do it because you're passionate about it, do it because you love it, because when time comes for the application and the essay, it just makes your life so much easier to write about. There are small details that you can add that, make your essay stand out from another person who's writing about robotics, right? It's the personal experiences and it's the anecdotes that really help.
Yeah, that's great. So yeah, thank you, Eric, a lot. Like, we really appreciate like you putting time aside to like share your experiences. Of course, thank you to CNC Edu Center for sponsoring this event, all the volunteers that support CNC Education Foundation, and of course, like all the parents and students that like came today to listen to our panel, and of course, Eric talks. So this is goodbye, and have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you, Eric.
Eric.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. We did pretty good on time today.
Yeah.
Yeah, not bad at all.